is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
Hello, good night, and welcome to The Doctor is In with me, Dr. Denothra Archer Cartwright. Thank you for joining in for another exciting show of all health, wellness, and things that pertain to the Bahamian Society. I want to thank you for joining us here tonight on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, on guardiantalkradio.com, and of course, our Facebook page, The Doctor is In with me, Dr. D. Archer. So tonight we've got a pretty interesting topic that we're going to get into, and of course brought to you by Medical Concierge Services for all your medical healthcare needs. We're located on Collins Avenue inside the Bahamas Heart Center. We are a family medicine clinic. I am a family medicine specialist, and so we deal with everybody from children to the elderly. We take care of everyone in your family. We also have home care services, so if you need us to come to you, we are available, as we do some specialty things like IV vitamins and micro needling. So check out our website, mcsfamilymedicine.com, for everything that goes on there. And tonight we're going to talk about anxiety and what causes anxiety, how do you cope with anxiety, and how do we move on from that. I would say that quite a few people have been coming in. A lot of people come in sometimes and they think they have a heart problem. You know, this is heart month, but sometimes it's not really your heart. So a lot of people come in and they say, Dr. Archer, my chest has been pounding or racing, or been having this particular problem. I think there's something wrong with my heart, or, I get a little, lose my breath, or I get these attacks. What could it be? Do I need to do an ECG or something like that? And sometimes it is just anxiety. And when I say just anxiety, not to say just anxiety, because anxiety can be pretty detrimental for some people. It can start affecting a person's life. And so it's something to be aware of, especially with everything that's going on in the world. It's a stressful time, and there is a really big relation between stress and anxiety. So it's not always your heart. That's kind of like the key of what we're going to talk about tonight. So what is anxiety? So anxiety really is a feeling of fear, dread, uneasiness, sometimes worry. Some people sweat, they feel uneasy, they feel restless, they feel tense. Some people very classically have a rapid beat. So you can see how the mental capacity or changes or dysfunction can actually affect your physical health. So you can actually get an increase in your heartbeat. And it can be a normal reaction to stress, but when it becomes anxiety or an anxiety disorder is when that anxiousness becomes such a problem that it starts affecting your life. So there can be people that are having problems with work. They have anxiety sometimes before taking a test, before important decisions in their life. And this can be kind of a normal nervousness or anxiety that we're all used to. And sometimes it helps you to kind of cope and deal through a situation. It can give you a boost of energy, and it can help you focus sometimes, because then it hones you into one particular thing that you need to deal with. However, for people with anxiety disorders, the fear is not temporary, and it can be what we call overwhelming. And this is where anxiety becomes a problem. So there are a variety of what we call anxiety disorders. It doesn't just come as just general anxiety. And these conditions, they don't always go away, and they can get worse over time if they're not dealt with, if they're not recognized. The symptoms can interfere with your daily activities, such as your job performance, schoolwork, and relationships. So, people will not be able to do or go about their daily lives because of what's happening. And it can be quite frightening because you don't know. And there's that physical aspect of your heart racing or going really, really fast. So, as we said, experiencing occasional anxiety is a normal part of life, but people who suffer with anxiety disorders have this intense and excessive and persistent worry and fear about everyday situations. Often, anxiety disorders involve repeated episodes of sudden feelings of intense anxiety and fear or terror that can peak within minutes. And that's what we tend to call panic attacks. So, these feelings of anxiety and panic interfere with your daily activity, makes it difficult to control, and is basically out of proportion to the actual danger. So something very small can become something extremely big, and it can last for a very long time. You may avoid places or situations to prevent these feelings, and symptoms may start during childhood or even teen years and continue into adults. So a lot of people that have anxiety, it starts quite early on, unless there is like a triggering thing. So, a lot of younger people, children, they can take that into adulthood. And then for adults, there's usually something that causes the anxiety specifically. So there are different examples of anxiety disorders, including generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety, which can be phobias, separation anxieties, of course. And when we talk about general anxiety, which is the anxiety that most people will talk about, GAD, people worry about ordinary issues such as health, money, work, family, but their worries are excessive. And they have almost every day for at least 6 months. So if you having that problem, it's been lasting for a while, you've been doing different things, and it doesn't seem to be going away, this could be general anxiety. So when these symptoms last over 6 months, we start thinking about an anxiety disorder. Of course, we spoke about the panic disorders, which are like panic attacks, and these are very sudden, they're repeated episodes. They're usually very intense fear that people feel, and there's no danger. So you would hear people say, I was just lying in bed, and all of a sudden I felt really fearful or worried, or I started having a racing heartbeat. And these are usually consistent with your panic attacks. These attacks come on really quickly, and they can last several minutes or even more. So you have people, when they're lasting really long, will jump up and even go into the emergency room, get an ECG tracing where they're looking at their heart and find out that there's nothing going on. And it can be very stressful because people are telling you there's nothing wrong. But this is the issue with anything that's linked to your psychological well-being. And so I always like to think about health as not just the physical, the psychological, but also the spiritual aspect is extremely important. And what we call wellness or good health is when all of those things are balanced. So when something is off, it can then start affecting your physical health. Okay, so those are the main ones. So what are some of the other common symptoms? Well, we talked about the feelings of nervousness, restlessness or tenseness, having a sense of impending danger, panic, or doom, having increased heart rate, breathing rapidly, like hyperventilating, so breathing very quickly, sweating, trembling, feeling weak or tired. If you're having trouble concentrating or thinking about anything other than the present worry, so your mind keeps going back to one particular thing. Having trouble sleeping. So a lot of people have trouble sleeping. They say, I'm not really worried about something, but usually there might be something a little deeper in that. Experiencing gastrointestinal problems. So what is that? Having issues with your gastrointestinal tract. So, your stomach's feeling funny. Some people maybe even have diarrhea and different things, but it comes with the symptoms. Having difficulty controlling worry and having the urge to avoid things that trigger anxiety. So you find yourself avoiding certain things because it makes you anxious, it makes you nervous. This may be a sign that you're suffering from some type of anxiety. So there are some other kind of anxiety categories that we also look at. There are a little less common, but also happen. You have agoraphobia, which is a type of anxiety disorder in which you fear and often avoid certain places or situations. And that might cause you to panic or make you feel trapped, helpless, or embarrassed. So, some people, say every time I walk into the mall, I get a fare and they have to leave. So that's a form of anxiety, or, so we call that agoraphobia. It can also be linked to other conditions. So it's very important if you're having these symptoms to meet with your family physician and have a discussion about what's going on, because there could be another medical problem that is linked to it and a physical health problem that's actually relating to it. So it may not, don't just take anxiety how it is, but also go and take a look and get it checked out. We talked about generalized anxiety and panic disorder. Selective mutism, which is consistent failure of children to speak in certain situations. So a sign in children, because children do not always manifest stress the way that adults do. They can simply be silent. So you might see, sometimes you see this on movies where there's a kid that doesn't speak. And it's not that the child doesn't have the ability to speak. They may have been traumatized, or they may be suffering from some type of anxiety, and that is their coping mechanism of how to do that. However, this can cause problems in their home, in their social situation, and also with school. So, that's something that has to be addressed. And separation anxiety disorder, a childhood disorder characterized by anxiety that's excessive for the child's development and relates to separation from parents and others and parental roles. So you can see that with kids who maybe have lost their parents or, have those types of issues, they'll also present that way. You have social phobias, which involve high stress, anxiety, fear, and avoidance of social situations due to feelings of embarrassment, self-consciousness, concern about being judged or viewed in a particular way. So, some people don't want to be in those social environments and be negatively viewed by others. So that becomes an impending doom kind of situation, and they can get panic attacks and suffer from anxiety from that. People can also, what comes under this anxiety disorder array is specific phobias. So just being afraid or to specific objects or situations. Phobias can then provoke what we call panic attacks in some people. And then we have the substance-induced anxiety disorders, and they're characterized by intense anxiety or panic that are directed as a result of misusing drugs. So people who are using drugs quite often, taking medications that they maybe should not be, who have been exposed to some type of toxic substance or are dealing with withdrawal from a drug, can have these type of panic attacks or be related to anxiety. And then there's a varying array of unspecified and other specific disorders that people can suffer. So when should you see your doctor? If you feel like you're worrying too much and it's interfering with your work or your relationships or any part of your life, it's a good time to speak with your physician. If you fear, worry, or have anxiety that's upsetting to you and difficult to control, you should also speak to your doctor. If you start feeling depressed, if you have trouble with alcohol, drugs, or any other mental health concerns, then you should definitely speak with your physician. If you think your anxiety could be linked to a physical health problem, or if you have any suicidal thoughts or behavior, you should seek emergency treatment right away. So varying reasons to really kind of see your physician. And in the most extreme cases, you need to look for emergency services. So what causes anxiety? It's not completely understood. It's one of those things that sometimes happen in even people that we don't expect. And I've come to find that subconsciously, some people are, reacting to certain things that they may not even be consciously aware of. And I see a lot of times that, anxiety is definitely related to stress. And so some people are even just a little bit more prone or triggered to these disorders. There are some inherited traits. So if you have a family history of anxiety or any kind of mental health issues, then you may be someone who's a little bit more easily triggered. And then, of course, there's life experiences, stress, all of that combined cause people to, have anxiety for various reasons. There are also medical causes that we have to consider. For some people, it may be linked to underlying health. And in many cases, it may be the first sign of these issues. So it can be linked to heart disease, diabetes, thyroid problems such as hypothyroidism. So when you come into the doctor, we'll usually check your thyroid to make sure that that may not be the issue. Respiratory disorders, COPD or asthma related to similar things. Drug use, as we talked about, and withdrawal. Chronic pain or irritable bowel syndrome, and then rare tumors that can be in the brain that relate to our fight or flight hormones. So that is one of the more rare things, but it's something that we have to consider when people come in, and we kind of can't figure it out now. So there'll be varying tests that will be done. There are also various side effects of certain medications as a possibility. So it's a good idea to go through your physician with your drug history to make sure that there's nothing that's really kind of causing it or causing the symptoms that look like anxiety. So if it's possible that your anxiety may be linked to an underlying condition, if you do not have a blood relative who is was suffered from anxiety in some way, if you didn't have anxiety as a child, and if you don't really have to avoid certain situations because of your anxiety. If you've had a sudden occurrence of anxiety that seems unrelated to life events, or you didn't have a previous history of anxiety. So you've never had anxiety before, it just kind of pops up, definitely something you want to check out. So what are some of the risk factors? We talked a little bit about stress, and stress can even be due to an illness. So people with chronic disease and chronic disorders over time extremely stressful. And so this can lead to anxiety all in itself. There is a link to anxiety and trauma, and you see this a lot in children who endure some type of abuse or traumatic event, or witness a traumatic event, and they have a higher risk of developing anxiety over time. And in some point of their life, even as an adult, some of the anxiety may be related to childhood trauma, building up of stress. So constantly being in a high stress environment, whether it be work, whether it be financial, will it be a social thing? All of this can lead to persons having anxiety. Personality. Some people, like we say, you hear people say she's a bit high strung. So those people, there's certain personalities that are just more prone because they're warriors and they think about things a lot more. So personality has quite a bit to do with that as well. It's also linked to a lot of other mental health disorders. So one that's often linked is depression. And so, people with depression sometimes also have anxiety disorder. Having blood relatives with anxiety disorder, of course, and then, of course, drugs and alcohol, as we mentioned. What can be some of the complications that we go through? And depression, as we talked about, substance misuse, trouble with sleeping or insomnia, so not being able to get to sleep for some reason. A lot of people say, like, I go to bed at maybe 10 o'clock and by 1 or 2 o'clock I'm up, I'm pacing, I'm thinking, or I'm having these panic attacks. Digestive or bowel problems. I tend to be a worrier in my bowel. That's where I get a little queasy when I'm having anxiety. So some people really have really bad GI effects that can affect their life quite often. Social isolation, so not wanting to be in certain situations can lead people to really be isolated, not go out of their home, or just completely avoid social interaction completely because they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to feel that way. And sometimes they don't want to have a panic attack in front of other people. Problem functioning at school or work. So actually, causing you to have problems on your job, not completing your task, or kids not doing well in school. These are really complications. And just having a poor quality of life. And most seriously, chronic anxiety, severe anxiety can lead to some people even committing suicide or doing things to themselves. So it's very important, if you're feeling that way, to really reach out and get the emergency care that you need. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about how do we cope with anxiety, how do we deal with the stress, and what are the things that we can do to help prevent this inside of our lives. So we'll be right back on The Doctors and with me, Dr. Dee Archer, in a few moments.
Join the Nassau Guardian as we celebrate International Women's Day, Tuesday, March 8th, 2022. This global day is celebrating the historical, cultural, and political achievements of women in the Bahamas and around the world. Join us as we celebrate and recognize the outstanding Bahamian women in religion, politics, sports, national security, business, education, and community affairs. For more information, call the Nassau Guardian at 302-2300 or call your account executive. But join us as we celebrate women's achievements, raise awareness against bias during International Women's Day, Tuesday, March 8th, 2022. Do you know you can get your business cards designed and printed for as low as 18 cents a card? If it's a poster you want, you can pay as little as $6 a square foot. If your print needs are short or long run, digital printing, wide format, or print consultation, call the best. Call Print Masters. Print Masters' goal is to provide its clients with the highest level of personal, professional service at an affordable price. Our state-of-the-art technology also makes working together efficient and easy. Laminations, business cards, flyers, posters, window and floor decals are just a few of the digitized print services offered at Print Masters. Call 302-2361, 302-231, or visit us at the Nassau Guardian Building in Oaksfield. Print with the best. Print with Print Masters.
Good night and welcome back to The Doctor is In with me, Dr. Denothra Archer Cartwright, family medicine specialist, here on behalf of Medical Concierge Services. Our sponsor tonight, we're found on Collins Avenue, 326-1521. If you want to give us a call and make an appointment. And we're still signing up persons for NHI. So if you don't have an NHI doctors yet, you want to give us a call. WhatsApp line is 429-4880. So we were talking about anxiety and how it affects our lives. Just a few statistics before we kind of go on about anxiety. And general anxiety alone affects about 6.8 million people or adults in the United States, which is about 3.1% of their population. Yet only about 43% of people are receiving treatment. Women are twice as likely to be affected as men. And general anxiety disorder often co-occurs with major depression, as we talked about. When we looked at panic disorder, that's about 2.7% or 6 million people of their population. Our numbers tend to be quite similar because of our makeup. Social anxiety, much larger, actually, 6.8%. So people just avoiding social situations. Specific phobias, another 19 million people, 8.7%. And of course, stress is linked throughout that. Some other ones that they cover is like obsessive compulsive disorder, which we didn't really talk about, post-traumatic stress, and then the major depression. So quite relevant in fact with people in America, right? And so for those of you who want to join in the conversation or have a question, our phone line tonight is 323-6232, 325-4316, or 325-4259. So how do we prevent this? How do we look out for these problems? Well, it's important to get help early. Anxiety, like many other mental health issues and conditions, are harder to treat the longer you wait. Think, hey, this may be going away, but like we said, after about 6 months, it's a definite diagnosis. But you even maybe want to come in before, because if you're having problems or coping issues, then that's something that you maybe can deal with very early, and you may not need any kind of medication. You want to stay active, participate in activities that you enjoy, that make you feel good, make you feel good about yourself. I think during the pandemic, everyone got home and bogged down. So a lot of people struggled with their mental health and some, things that were going on. So as we open up, get back to the things that you really, really love. We as human beings really, really need social interaction. It's a part of our makeup. We need to be around other people. We need human contact. We need physical contact. So, that can be very trying on someone's psyche, even if especially if they were living on their own, or they even developed financial or economic problems because of everything that's happened. So I like to keep that in mind as I see people, kind of be aware of that, because sometimes people come in for one thing, but really it's because they're having these other issues that they don't know how to express. And you want to avoid, of course, drugs and alcohol in order to do that. Is very, very important. So how do we figure out that this is what you have, and what do we do? And we're going to talk a little bit more at the end, some other coping mechanisms. The CDC actually has quite a few really good ones. And so how is it diagnosed? Well, it's called, general anxiety is usually kind of a clinical diagnosis, we call it. So your doctor kind of makes that decision. And you can go to your primary care provider. Your family physician is usually going to be your first stop on your list. We have a caller. Caller, you're on the air.
How are you?
Caller, go ahead.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I didn't catch the beginning of the show, but I think you're talking about anxiety, or?
Yes, we're talking about anxiety and anxiety disorders. This is the doctor's in with me, Dr. D. Archer.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So is it just about COVID, or is it just generally talking about mental health?
Yeah, we talk about medical health. We talk about everything. And tonight we're kind of highlighting anxiety and what some people are going through and what you should look out for, and how to help you cope.
Yeah. Personally, I 3 weeks ago made a very bad decision of being facing anxiety several years now. I've been seeking and other counseling, but still haven't broken. I'm somewhat better, but I still have manic or panic attacks. And
Right.
3 weeks ago, it's just occurring to me now that I made the biggest mistake. I've been fighting so long to find a job, and I toughed it out. Things were rough, and it was. I don't even know how to say it. I was going through it with the supervisor, and when I pushed through, remember self coaching each day and all of that, and it finally got called in for my probation report, and there was some stuff that was not true. He brought it forward in writing. He was making it hard every day, but he took it a little bit further, and I couldn't believe it. And it was it didn't occur to me I was finally at the point where I wanted to be in terms of passing probation and getting stable employment. but all the long-term benefits didn't forecast or appear to me, and it was just the heaviness of him putting in writing the derogatory comment and a job called, and it wasn't a better offer by far. But I left, and now on the new job, I'm like, why did I leave? You know, like, I pushed through, made it to where I wanted to be. This is the benefits I was looking for. And it's like, it didn't even cross my mind then. And I'm like, I had like a memory fault. I just, you know, now I'm just trying to rationalize, like, what happened? Like, I knew I was emotionally hurt by what had taken place. But the time when I made the decision to walk, I didn't remember or even have in my mind, oh, you have permanent job status now. You have benefits. You have, you know, none of that was present. But now, 3 weeks later, I can see it constantly what I lost, and it's debilitating.
Yeah. Wow. You know, thank you for your story. I'm really sorry to hear that. Now that you've come to this realization, are you willing to reach out and talk to someone, talk to a doctor or a counselor, so that, you know, this doesn't happen again and you can recognize some of these things and it doesn't affect your life so much?
Well, I feel like I have to, because like it just resonated like a few days ago, and it's been like every time I close my eye, I just see my previous employment, and then the new job is like almost, there's a lot of triggers, so it's really beating me up. It's been very uncomfortable since I had this, like, I don't even know what to describe it as. You know, like, maybe you could shed the light, like, why is it just resonating now? You know, like.
Yeah, I think sometimes in the moment you're not realizing, because it is something, it's partly a psychological thing, and your way of coping, we talked about avoiding the situation, and that's what you did. You basically removed yourself from that, what you felt at the time was very stressful and triggering. And at that time, and a lot of this stuff happens quite subconsciously. And that's what makes it kind of difficult sometimes to identify these patterns of behavior until now you have a moment to reflect, or, you know, something has just kind of spurred that maybe through the conversation. And that's why it's important to have these conversations. But within that and taking that realization, I think you realize that there is a problem there. And that if you don't learn to cope with, you know, things that are going to trigger you or worry you, you're constantly going to be running away or moving away from situations when there might be a better way of dealing with it. And so I really think that you need to talk with someone, come in and see a physician. You can always come in and talk with one of our doctors, 326-1521. I just hope, how are you feeling about yourself? You're not in a place where you want to harm yourself or anything like that?
No, but I'm extremely upset. Like, I have this as my number one failure.
Right. And so we don't take things always sometimes as failures. Sometimes, you know, we have to take them as learning lessons. And I think, like you say, this was an eye opener to you, and maybe you had been struggling for a while, but you were able to cope. And this was the thing that really kind of tipped the scale. And so it's better to know that now and to deal with it and be able to move forward. The key to anxiety and these types of disorders is really kind of reprogramming ourselves to cope with situations differently. And so taking control of our kind of our subconscious in a way, so that in the next time in an environment like that, you would choose different choices and be able to not be overcome with worry and, you know, just all of the stuff. I know everything can be very overwhelming. And like you said, in the moment, you didn't even realize. So definitely you can be helped with that. We all go through things sometimes, and we all need help sometimes. And, you know, we're taught to be very strong people, but there's nothing wrong with getting help, getting the support that you need to bring you through so that you can go on to live as full as possible. So even if you want to leave your information with the producer, perhaps I can reach out to you as well, if you're still on the line, caller.
Hi, yeah, I'm here. Thanks.
Yeah, so definitely leave your information with him. Any other questions for me? Any other concerns? I just want to make sure you're safe, but I think this is something that we can help you with and get you even to the right spaces.
Yeah, I'm just very saddened and disappointed myself right now.
Yeah. We all make decisions that we sometimes regret. That's the part of life. The big part of it is being able to then recognize those things and pick ourselves back up, and keep the journey going. It's extremely important. And you look back at this moment and realize that it's not as significant as you thought it was. All right. Thank you, caller. I think you said your call dropped, but if you want to call back and give the producer your name and number, I have no issues reaching out to you, or you can reach out to us at MCS, Medical Concierge Services, 326-1521, and book an appointment, or WhatsApp line 429-4880. And if I can't personally help you, I have no problems referring you to where you can get any assistance to help you to cope through this stressful period. We're all going through a lot of stress, and do not be so hard on yourself for what happened. You seem like you were battling with anxiety in the past, and, you know, it's just about getting the support you need at the times that you need. All right. And thank you for calling. But yeah, so to kind of just get back to our diagnostic, and that's what we're talking about. And it's about recognizing that you're having these issues. The caller, obviously, we kind of inspired in her to really take a look at what was happening in her life. She made those decisions. And it's important to have that time of reflection because it allows us to see how things are affecting us. And sometimes we don't even realize how much things are affecting us. Either somebody else has to point it out, or something drastic has to happen in our lives at times. So we don't want to wait. We want to try to recognize those things early, and we want to get the help that we need. So in order to make a proper diagnosis, like you said, it's a very clinical thing. It's a psychological evaluation where we kind of look at some of the things, some of the triggers, some of the things, in fact, of how it is affecting your life. And this involves discussing your thoughts and behavior. And, you know, we use that to pinpoint or kind of diagnose what is related and what's causing these complications. Anxiety disorders often occur along with, like we say, other mental health issues such as depression. And that is, I think, something that is overlooked in this society quite a bit. We don't really talk about depression and how we cope with sadness and worry. And so it's hard to recognize when it's not culturally something that, you know, really kind of pops up. But these things are very, very real. It's so important to reach out and speak to a healthcare provider who can get you the necessary help. We also compare your symptoms to what we call the DSM-5, which is a book that we use, a diagnostic statistical manual of mental disorders. where we look at specific criteria in which these things might fall into line with, and it allows us to assess what type of anxiety you may be having, if it's related to stress, and gives us a bit more information. There's varying ways to treat these issues, and a lot of it involves some type of therapy, talk therapy, psychotherapy. A very big one that I've been doing a lot with is, all right, thank you, producer. I've got caller, I got your name and your number. Cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the most effective form of psychotherapy for anxiety. It generally is short-term treatment. It teaches you specific skills to improve your symptoms and gradually return back to the activities that you've been avoiding. So we replace some of those behaviors with other behaviors, and we can get you back to doing what you were doing before. This can include exposure to some of the theory in a very gradual way, which is not overwhelming. So by encountering those things, kind of tackling what kind of triggered these things, and how do we now replace those triggers of anxiety and build your confidence that you can manage those situations of anxiety on your own. So a lot of it has to do with psychotherapy and talk therapy and cognitive theory. There are also some medications. Some people just need medication. So several types of medication we can use to relieve some of the symptoms depending on the type of anxiety that you may have. There's a variety of different things, from antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications specifically that can be prescribed, as well as usually in short-term cases when people having acute anxiety attacks, we use what we call like benzodiazepines, beta blockers, and sedatives. So things to calm people down. You hear Xanax and these different things and stuff like that. And of course, your beta blockers for those who have an elevated heart rate, because we do know that there is a physical component sometimes to persons. And then sometimes it's just that, like the caller, an avoidance of the situation where you make decisions to just get out of the situation, whether it may be the best decision or not. And so these are just short-term relievers on benzodiazepines or any of these short-term medications for a very long time. And because they can become another type of crutch, and you don't want people to be lenient on that. You want people to learn the coping mechanisms that will actually help them to deal with their ongoing issues. Some of the lifestyle recommendations that are very helpful for people who are struggling with anxiety, and these are the things that you can even start on your own, even before seeing your doctor and while during the course of getting therapy. We talked about keeping physically active, developing a routine of activity most days of the week. Exercise is powerful in reducing stress. It improves your mood and it helps you to stay healthy. So it deals with some of those other conditions that might be involved, such as diabetes, heart disease, stuff like that. Exercise is going to be very good. You want to start out quite slowly, and you want to progressively increase the amount of intensity in your activities. So I tend to tell people to start where they are. Take 1 or 2 days that you know that you're going to definitely get into your exercise. Start slow, and then you want to progressively kind of get more and more active, increasing your time. You want to do at least get up to a point of optimization where you're doing about 4 times a week for about 30 minutes. And then you can really kind of know that you're making a difference in your life. So I think we have a few more minutes. If we have any other callers or questions who want to come in, 323-6232, 325-4316, or 325-4259. And so we talked about avoiding alcohol and recreational drugs. If you're a smoker, you want to quit smoking and you want to cut back drinking caffeinated beverages if you're a big coffee drinker. So if you're drinking multiple cups of coffee, that can also sometimes affect some people's heart rate, and they can come with signs of anxiety. You want to use stress management and relaxation techniques, which you use between visualization and yoga, meditation are examples. We talked about breathing exercises, I think last year on one of our shows. And you want to make sleep a priority. These are constant things that are going to be beneficial for your health. So you want to get enough sleep. You want to try to feel rested. And a lot of people need help with their sleep regimen. So that's something that we do as well, helping you to see the things that are actually causing you to have poor sleep and creating the type of scheduled, a structured environment in where sleep is more productive. And of course, eating healthy. We always talk about eating healthy. So getting more vegetables in your diet, fruits, whole grain, fish may also be linked to reducing anxiety, but they're doing more research on that. Of course, coping and support. So it's very important to learn about this issue or what you may be having. If you think you have anxiety, you want to learn as much about it. You want to talk to your doctor. You want to talk to your health provider. You want to find out what might be causing your specific condition and what treatment might be best for you. You want to involve your family and friends because this is a situation where you do need a lot of support. So you want to include the people who are closest to you so they know what's happening with you. You want to stick with your treatment plan. So if you work out something with your doctor, it's going good, please don't just drop it. You want to continue that. You want to have that discussion before you do that. So you want to take your medication if you're on medication, and you want to keep all your appointments with your doctor and complete any assignments or any therapy suggestions that you have, because consistency makes a very big difference. You know, we develop these habits, we develop these coping mechanisms over years and years and years. So it's not extremely easy to just turn around and get rid of them. It does take a bit of time. And as we talked about, the earlier, the better. You want to take action, learning about your triggers and your anxiety and what actually causes your stress. You want to practice strategies you develop with your mental health provider so you're ready to deal with these anxious and worrying feelings. And you want to keep, if you can find a support group that you are struggling maybe with similar things or can help support you with some of the things that you're going through. So support is extremely, and of course you want to learn to manage all these different techniques. You want to socialize. So a lot of these things become compounded when we lack the social interactions that allow us to kind of deal with some of the things that are going on with us. When we are just by ourselves, a lot of these things definitely become compounded. And if you're suffering from anxiety and you're not in a social or keeping up with your social environment, it actually makes it worse. So some of the things that you may do to avoid it may actually lead to a cycle of, dependence and anxiety that just gets worse over time. So what you need to do is to break that cycle. If you feel anxious, take a brisk walk, get into a hobby, do something else, get that worry, that issue off. So having other things that you can do. So before your appointment, if you're thinking about going in, if you've heard the show and you said, hey, maybe I'm suffering from anxiety, maybe this is something that's going on with me, or I realize that it's been affecting my life, you really want to think about your symptoms before you go in. So you have a good talk with the doctor. They really know what's happening with you. You kind of are able to explain what your symptoms are, whether they are getting better, whether they are getting worse, and how they may affect your daily activity. You want to start looking at what are some of your stressors or your triggers, and what things in your life may have been where this all started, because this is the kind of things that you're going to kind of delve into your conversation. And it may be something from childhood, it may be something that happened, or maybe that's the way that you saw other family members coping with different things. You want to figure out if there are any close family members that may also have some type of mental health history or problem. And sometimes that can be difficult, especially in our society. We're not always close to our father's side of the family, or, you might have had a parent that passed away when you were young. So getting that information is difficult. I think in this country, we don't look at the mental health issues as well. And sometimes even families kind of push that or shun that away. And a lot of people do not get the diagnosis that they need. They just tell you, oh, this happened to this person or that happened to that person. But it's important to figure it out because some of these things can be linked and passed on to your children. So they need that history. All right. You want to have a good idea and maybe write down all the medication you're on so that the doctor can decide if it has to do with anything that you're on. Because if it's just as simple as maybe some medication that can be changed to a different medication, or you can be taken off, and it might be something as simple as that. And then, of course, I always tell people to ask questions. So if you are going to see your doctor, ask questions. Don't be afraid. Have that relationship with your doctor. It's going to be really, really good for you to do that and be able to ask pertinent questions. And some of the questions you might want to ask is, what may be the cause after you've had that talk and maybe you've done a workup. You really want to know what your diagnosis is. So you want to know what may have caused your anxiety. Are there any possible situations or other psychological issues or physical health that be making it worse? Ask the doctor, do you think I need to do any testing? You should I see a psychiatrist? Should I see a psychologist? What type of therapies maybe to help me? If you don't get this information, don't feel free to just kind of ask. Do I need to be on medication? What would those medications be? In addition to treatment, is there anything that I can do for myself to help myself out? Do you have any educational material that I can use and read up? And your doctor should be open to answering those types of questions, because those are going to be important. Just before we go, we're going to look at a few more of those coping skills by the CDC. They had a really great article kind of talking about ways of coping with stress, especially in light with the pandemic and what's going on. And it goes on to say that COVID-19 pandemic has had a major effect on our lives. Many of us are facing challenges, and this can be extremely stressful, overwhelming, and cause strong emotions in adults and children. And don't forget the children. I think the children have suffered the most during this time of closures, of school closures. So don't forget the children. And that's why I really wanted to mention earlier that the children always don't present as adults. And so you have to look at subtle changes and differences when it comes to children. And parents, be vigilant. Go and ask your kids questions, see how they're doing, check on their mental health status. All right. And so public health actions such as social distancing have basically led to a lot of people be feeling isolated and lonely and increase both stress and anxiety. So learning to cope with stress in a healthy way will make you and the people around you that you care about much more resilient. And so they talk about the things that stress can cause: feelings of anger, sadness, worry, numbness, frustration, changes in appetite, energy, desire, interest, difficulty concentrating and making decisions, difficulty sleeping or nightmares, physical reactions such as headache, body pain, stomach problems, and skin rashes, worsening of chronic health problems, worsening of mental health conditions, increased use of tobacco, alcohol, and substances. And so you can see that these stressors also now are the same risk factors that we talked about that were related to anxiety. And so ways to cope with stress. So you want to take breaks from watching, reading, or listening to news stories. So take yourself out of that environment. Of course, you want to take care of your body. We talked about the exercise, meditation, eating healthy, getting lots of sleep, and avoiding alcohol and tobacco substances. taking time to unwind and to do activities that you enjoy. And that's one of the key things I like to point out to my patients, getting back to the things that they really, really enjoy, finding a hobby, something outside of work and outside of our regular daily activities is extremely important as human beings and social beings. Connecting with others and talking to other people. You want to talk to people you trust. You want to reach out to your healthcare providers we talked about. And you want to connect with your community or a faith-based organization. So if you do have a spiritual connection, you want to reach out to those places where you can be around others in a safe manner. And so those are really important mechanisms. And you want to definitely monitor yourself. And if you're feeling that it may be even something further like depression, you definitely should reach out for help. And if you feel like harming yourself, that's an emergency situation and you really should get urgent help and care. And so I hope that was helpful. I hope to speak to the caller. Let me just, producer, get that contact information. I'll write it down. And so that that person, I can reach them. And, this is something that we should talk about and definitely be aware of. And if we constantly do that, then we will not only help ourselves, but we will be able to help those around us. And just make sure I got that number correct. Okay, and so I'll be reaching out to the caller. And for everyone else tonight, I want you to thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful. I hope you were able to do some self-reflection. And if you're suffering from anxiety, depression, or any other mental health issue, reach out to your healthcare provider, have a sit down with them and go through this and see if this is something that you can be assisted with, that you can find help with, that you can get the proper therapy for, because we are here for each other. And we're here to make each other better and to make everybody stronger. So anxiety is something that's really, really important. We don't talk about it often, but it's definitely there. And I want to thank you tonight, Medical Concierge Services. Check out our site, mcsfamilymedicine.com. You can also make appointments there and you can see the other activities that we do. We're on Collins Avenue, 326-1521. or WhatsApp 429-4880. I want to thank you all for listening again on a Tuesday evening with me, Dr. D. Archer on Guardian Radio. The doctor is in. Have a good night.
This is Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.